watching a Project Nerd presentation. Enjoy, nerds.
Hello, this is Greydon Clark. I am an independent, low-budget filmmaker. I've made a number of movies, over 20 movies throughout my career. I started in the 60s. I directed movies in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. So I've had a long career. I am now doing a podcast with CF3.
Welcome back to another episode of CF3. I'm Dane Mychal.
And I am Jeff Johnson.
And our co-host is so broke, he can't even afford the nickel arcade. I thought I'd go with the financial joke this time. We're talking about Dame's Marvs. Dames, where are you broadcasting from today?
Well, I'm live from the video arcade.
Can you be more specific? Which arcade?
No, I can't. It's called the video arcade.
Well, you could have called it the penny arcade or something, maybe.
But then I would be wrong because it's the video arcade.
Oh, I think you're referring to how Greydon couldn't even come up with a name for the video arcade in Joysticks.
Yes, he did. It's the video arcade.
Oh, well, it's good to see you guys again for another episode of CF3. Again, as a video talk show, this is great.
Woo woo!
We had the pleasure to talk with the director of Joysticks, our film of the week, Greydon Clark, way back in May. And we're finally going to release that now as a full-on video. It's going to be awesome. Greydon recently released his autobiography, you guys. Jeff, what's the name of it?
Oh, you mean This Beautiful Thing, On the Cheap, My Life in Low Budget Filmmaking?
And look, we all three have a copy of On the Cheap that we got from Greydon Clark's website. I'm pretty sure it's just greydonclark.com.
Beautiful book.
Jeff, what did Greydon personalize in your copy?
He wrote, "To Jeff and CF3, good luck, and that's without warning. Greydon Clark."
Ah, nice little pun there because he directed
Without warning. Yeah.
On mine, he wrote, "To Dane and CF3 podcast, quit playing with your joysticks."
Oh.
Greydon Clark. Dames, what did he scribble down for you?
Well, he wasn't, he was very, brevity was his thing. We went out for coffee that day, and I had to leave real quick, and I didn't end up paying for my coffee. So when he sent me the book, he just said, "Hi, Dames, you son of a bitch."
That's
Sorry,
awesome.
Bob.
So I owe you coffee, bud.
Greydon directed, of course, such films as Without Warning, Wacko, Final Justice, and our film of the week, Joysticks. He worked with Joe Don Baker quite a bit, but also actors like Jack Palance and Martin Landau on more than one occasion. And without further ado, here's Greydon and our talk about Joysticks for the cult fans. So from your chapter or scene, if it's like a screenplay, on Joysticks,
Yes.
How did a teen sex comedy set in a video arcade wind up on your radar?
I'll tell you how. It's kind of interesting. I had made a picture called Wacko, which was a comedy horror spoof in 1980. And I really liked the picture. It was one of my favorites. So I had a test screening in San Antonio, Texas. I'm going to guess this was January of '82. We made the picture in, we made the picture in '81, This test screening was in January, maybe February of '82 in San Antonio, Texas. So I go down to San Antonio from Los Angeles, where I'm living. And I walk into the theater, and it's a multiplex, you know, much like theaters are today, or at least were before this terrible virus. It's probably closed them all down. But at any rate, I walked into the lobby and I look around. It's a big lobby, and I look over to the corner, and there's 10, 15 young boys standing in line. And I thought, what the hell? That's not the concession stand. What are they doing over there? So I walked over and I saw my first video arcade game. They were standing in line with their quarters, waiting for the kid in front of them to lose so he would leave, and then they would step up, put the quarter in, and play the game. And I looked at it and I thought, wow, look at that. That's a great idea. I can make a movie out of that. So I came back after the test screening, which went very, very well. I made a deal with a distributor to distribute Wacko. And in the meantime, I started writing a screenplay for Joysticks. And there was a couple of young guys who were kind of hanging around the office. By that time, I had my own office and so on. You know, and they said, you know, how did this screening go in Wacko in San Antonio? And I said, yeah. And I said, I'm going to do a movie. My next movie is going to be about a video arcade and the kids that go to it and the parents that try to close it down. So they said, oh, let me write it. Let me write it. Well, they weren't writers, but I thought, well, Christ, that kind of reminds me of what I did to Al Adamson 15 years earlier. So I said, okay, guys, go ahead and write it, but I'm not guaranteeing you that I will use any of it, but I'll give you $1,000 when you turn in the screenplay. You got 2 weeks. So they went off and they wrote, I told them the whole story, you know, a group of young guys running an arcade and the parents in the town, small town, are trying to close it down and the conflict arises. So a couple of weeks later, they delivered the screenplay to me. And I was not that happy with it, but, you know, I thanked them for it, gave them their grand. And nice guys, they have all been around the industry, working on crews and doing stuff, you know, but I had agreed to give them screen credit, which I did. So there was a guy I was working with named Curtis Birch. He and I actually wrote the screenplay. And I went to the distributor of Wacko. And I said, he was in Salt Lake, but he had come to Los Angeles to meet me and other people. And I said to him, listen, I got a great idea for a movie. My best idea since Black Shampoo. And everybody laughed, of course. So I said, it's called Video Madness, after the Reefer Madness. It's called Video Madness, and it's an arcade, and there's going to be a lot of tits and ass, and the bad guys are the parents. And he said, that's great, Greydon, that's great. What's it going to cost to make? I'd learned a little bit by then, so I knew I could make it for $300,000. So I said to him, $600.
Yep.
He said, okay. What do you want? I'm not going to give you $600,000. I said, look, I'll make the movie. I had money by that time from Wacko, and I had the banking relationship that I knew I could go to and get a couple of $100,000 to make my movie, because I would give him my house in effect. So we made a deal where he was going to give me $200,000 upon completion of the film, $200,000 in 6 months, $200,000 in another 6 months. So that would be my $600,000. And again, the picture was costing me $3 million. And I, of course, had ownership of the picture. He was going to be the distributor. So I made that movie. I cast Joe Don Baker, who had been in Wacko. And Joe Don and I had become friends from Wacko, and he agreed to do it for a third what I had paid him in Wacko. And I gave him 10% of my money after I had received $600,000. Joe Don was a great guy, great to work with, wonderful friend. Can't say enough good about him.
Great movie face.
Was he
I'm
skeptical? Was he skeptical about doing this type of movie? It was kind of like different from what he would normally do.
You know something, if I won't sound too egotistical, he believed in me.
Okay.
He said he had met my wife, Jackie, and we were over, he was over to our house. We were sitting on a patio. And I told him, I said, Joe Don, listen, I'm gonna put my own money into this, which was true. And he said, oh, you don't want to do that, Greydon. I said, well, you know, if I can get you for, I'll pay you $50,000 cash. I paid him 3 times that for Wacko. And even with Wacko, he had cut his price. I said, I'll give you 50 grand cash. I need you for 3 weeks. He said, you have a script? I said, sure, I'll give you a script. He said, I don't care. He said, listen, if you want to do it, I'll do it with you. So again, great guy. And so we made Joysticks, and it was interesting. At first I thought, well, I'll just go to a video arcade and I'll film in the evening when they're closed. Video arcades were really hot. I mean, the kids would jam in them, and they stayed open 12, 14, 15, 16 hours a day. And none of them were willing to close down because they were making a fortune.
Yeah.
So I thought, oh God, all right. So I'll go. Excuse me. I thought, oh God, I'll go on a sound stage and build the arcade, and I'll rent video games and bring them in, which I did. I had a great guy who worked with me on building the set. We found a small sound stage in Hollywood. We built the set and made the movie. So it was a lot of fun to make. We shot it in 3 weeks. Most of my movies have been 3-week movies. At one time, I considered myself the best 3-week director in Hollywood.
There you go.
Unfortunately, there was a time period where they no longer made 3-week movies. Anyhow, so I finished the picture. And as I say, I shot it under the title Video Madness. And my wife, Jackie, who was in that picture and in a lot of my pictures, said she didn't really think that title made much sense. I said, well, Reefer Madness. She said, what's that? So I started kicking around different titles. And I came up with the idea, joystick. Meaning, double meaning, joystick.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So the distributor was down again to see me, and I was showing him on the Moviola kind of a rough cut of 10 minutes or so of the film. And I said to him, Ray, I'm changing the title from Video Madness to Joystick. He said, oh, you can't do that. Every parent in the country will forbid their kids from seeing it. I said, I certainly hope so.
Yeah. That's what I was just thinking as you said that.
Yeah, exactly. So we walked across the street to a little cafe to have lunch. And I said, listen, Joystick is it. That's what it's going to be. He said, well, maybe I could call it Joysticks. He added an S to it. I thought, what the hell's the difference? Fine, call it Joystick. So he agreed to call it Joysticks. We finished the picture. And he released it to approximately 600. Now, that doesn't sound like anything today, but 600 was about a third of the country, 600 theaters, was about a third of the country, a normal release. He had test marketed it in El Paso, sorry. He had test marketed it in El Paso, Texas, and it went through the roof. The highest he had ever had for his company. His company was a distribution company called Jensen Farley out of Salt Lake. So he released it in the Southeast, and we were the #1 picture in the entire country. It was a gigantic hit. I mean, he called me on Saturday morning to report the Friday results. And he said, "Great, sit down because I'm talking to a millionaire." I thought, wow, we must have did good. So he gave me the figures for Friday. He said, if this holds up on Saturday, we're gonna each be millionaires. Because I had half of the movie and he had half of the movie after I received my $600,000. So he called me Sunday morning and he said, we did it. I don't know what he had to do with it, but anyhow, we did it. We're a gigantic hit. We're going to be the #1 picture in the entire country. I said, Jesus. So then he called me Monday and he said Sunday's figures were the highest he had ever had for a Sunday. Here's what happened. 3 months later, I was due. He had paid me the $200,000 on delivery of the picture. And when he saw the first cut, he said, "This isn't as good as Wacko. I don't think this is going to make any money." I said, "Ray, don't worry. Joysticks is going to make a fortune for both of us." 3 months later, he owed me another $200,000. Now, the picture had been playing around the country. We did something like $6 million at the box office. Again, these figures don't seem like much now, but in those days it was tremendous. My cut of that $6 million was roughly $1.5 million. That was without home video, without the rest of the country, without foreign, without all this stuff. So I was finally getting really going to be paid off big time. So he owed me a $200,000 payment. And I called him on, I think he owed me the $200,000 on a Monday or Tuesday. I called him the week before. And I said to him, "Ray, I'm going to close on some real estate in Los Angeles, way more expensive than I should be buying. So I just want to make certain that there's no problem with my, not only the $200,000 that's due me next week, but the $1 million plus that eventually will be due." "No problem, Greydon, no problem. Don't worry about it." That Friday, I closed on this house that was way more expensive than I could have ever even dreamt of. I mean, I grew up in a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, tiny house. He had $200,000 due me. He sent his assistant to my house. Now, I had closed on the other house, but we hadn't moved into it yet. And it was I was living on a hilltop kind of it. The assistant was walking up my driveway. He raised both of his hands and he said, "Don't kill me, I'm only the messenger." His assistant was a good guy. We were friends. I thought, oh, no. Because I had the guy who distributed Without Warning go bankrupt, the guy who distributed High Riders go bankrupt. I mean, I had a lot of problems with distributors over the years. But I thought, Jesus Christ, we did $6 million. How could he not have money to pay me? So Steve was the fellow's name. Steve walked up, said, "I'm sorry, Greydon, I don't have your money. But don't worry, it's good." Well, because I had had 3 or 4 other distributors go bankrupt in the past, I knew, oh, shit, it's not good. Well, to make a long story short, I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me because I've had a very fruitful and lucky life, and I'm a very happy fellow, but I never received another penny.
Good.
So that's low-budget filmmaking. Now, eventually, I did get the rights to Joysticks back, but that's after he had sold home video, after he had sold foreign countries, after he had played a third of the country. Anyhow, I like the picture. I think it's funny, and I think it's a fun picture and so forth.
You used some Pac-Man wipe transitions through the movie. Did
Oh,
you
yeah.
get any flack from Namco about that for being in an R-rated comedy?
No, what happened is this. During pre-production, I realized, I would not only have those wipes, but I would have to film the Pac-Man character, a game going on, because I had 4 or 5 different games. So I contacted Namco. Is it Namco? Was
Yeah.
that yeah.
Yep.
I contacted Namco, who were in Northern California. I said to them, I'm going to make a movie, and it's a video game movie and so on. I said, so I want to come up to see you guys to talk about it. They said, okay. So I hopped on a plane, flew up there, and I said to them, now guys, I want you to know something. I'm not going to ask you for a penny, no money. I'm going to do it all for publicity. Oh, okay. Because they thought I was going to ask them for money, but they didn't know it was a cheap little $300,000 TNA movie. So I said to them, I need the Pac-Man character. I need, Space Invaders and 3 or 4 other things. And I said, and there's a contest at the end of the movie between the good guy and the bad guy, and they're playing Ms. Pac-Man. And of course, the good guy wins. Oh, that'd be great. That'd be great this year. Then I said to them, look, do you have any other game that you are about to launch that is not now in the marketplace that I can put in the movie, and I will feature it in an earlier contest? And they said, we have a great one. It's going to sweep. It's going to be bigger than Pac-Man. I said, what is it? They said, it's Satan's Hollow. And you guys have probably never heard of Satan's Hollow.
Not that one.
Okay, so we didn't know what Satan's Hollow was. Not the end of the world, but at the same time, we couldn't really let it go. So we decided to get some help from somebody who does know a little bit about the game. Talking about Mr. Walter Day, founder of Twin Galaxies, the star of The King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, and consequently the inspiration for Mr. Litwack in the Disney Wreck-It Ralph films. Take it away, Walter.
Satan's Hollow? You know someone who's never heard of Satan's Hollow? It really came up on our radar because, I was running Twin Galaxies, and we were the crossroads of competitive gaming. We weren't part of the manufacturers. We were the gamers, okay? And so those gamers of that time, they heard of Satan's Hollow. In fact, it's very interesting. It was kind of like a worry when Satan's Hollow first came out, because Satan's Hollow came out just on the tail end of that time period when different towns have been legislating against video games as being negative or being not positive or being a not good, conducive to positivity influence in the lives of the youngsters. Suddenly, here's this game that's about the devil, fighting the devil, and the devil's in it, Satan's in it. And it really was a worry to us because we thought that, they might be able to use this as a further ploy in their, legislating against video games. So Satan's Hollow got a lot of attention back then. It was very interesting that this was a game that he came up with. It was almost like the video game industry was shooting itself in the foot, because here we are trying to win over the parents and the civic leaders by convincing them that video games are harmless. And here we have this game about the devil. The next thing that was interesting that put Satan's Hollow even more on the map is that the video game champs all over the place really embraced it as a game to beat and get the high score on. So high score wars were happening all over the place. People were going for the world record. It turned out to be a marathon game, which means it goes on for hour after hour or day after day after day. At those times when the local media is covering a video game champion beating a video game and putting a quarter in, and playing that game for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, we're talking about it being Satan's Hollow that's getting all that attention. All the cameras are on Satan's Hollow. So the devil's getting his due again, and that game's getting all this extra attention because it's the game that's being used for a multi-day marathon. And the final thing that was very interesting to me is that when we finally did the official Twin Galaxies Ironman Championship in the first week of July 1985, we had about 10 or 11 people put a quarter in a game and try and keep that game going for as long as they could. The idea was to make it last for 100 hours. And if they could keep that game going for 100 hours, they would win $10,000 from the special insurance account that we had paid for. And someone chose Satan's Hollow. All those other games that were famous for being marathon games were now shoulder to shoulder with Satan's Hollow, believe it or not. And for me personally, for those people who have never seen Satan's Hollow and don't necessarily believe that it really existed, I think it's an intriguing game to watch. I could stand there and be hypnotized and watch it get played for hours just about. And I can still hear the soundtrack. I can still hear the music. And it wasn't that easy to play. I found it a difficult game, and I could never marathon it myself. But it was definitely a champion on the game room floor that attracted enough serious competition that it even made its way into the 1985 Twin Galaxies Iron Man Championship.
Yeah, but it is in Joysticks. So I said, okay, fine. I'll have my earlier contest between the good guy and the bad guy be Satan's Hollow, which I did. And, we used it. And then since I had the right to use the Pac-Man character, I thought, well, why not do a boop, 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 boop across the screen and do a little wipe from scene to scene. And it seemed to work well. People like it.
Loved it.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah, me too.
Me too.
And welcome back to our film of the week. We're talking 1983's Joysticks by Greydon Clark. When a top local businessman and his two bumbling nephews try to shut down the town's only video arcade, the employees and the customers fight back. Jodan Baker's the big bad in this one. Is this one of Jodan's best movies, Dane? What do you think?
Well, it's between this and Mychal, right?
Indeed.
Black Shampoo
actually-
is my favorite.
Which one's your favorite?
Black Shampoo.
I don't think he was in that. Was he? That's definitely a Greydon Clark movie, but
Well, that's my favorite Greydon movie.
but I think a lot of people would say Walking Tall is probably the best movie
No.
that Jodan Baker was in. But
Legit movie.
yeah, it's like a budgeted movie. But Joysticks, for my money. First of all, it's one of my favorite Greydon Clark movies, and my favorite Jodan Baker movie, even though it was never a Mystery Science Theater 3000 experiment like Final Justice was. But first off, I want to pay homage to the music for this movie. What do you think about the opening theme song for this, Jeff?
Oh, Joysticks. You gotta wiggle it to the right or jerk it to the right. Joysticks. God, it's so goofy. I had forgotten about it. I actually rewatched it again last night and just wow. I'm like, well, at least you opened up with pole position and then that kind of song. So if that doesn't tell you what you're getting in for, nothing will.
I think the singer of it, who I'm not even gonna try and pronounce his last name. Yes, I am. Ray Kunekski. I think that he recorded his vocals in one take, but you gotta love the refrain. Totally awesome video games. And then when he shouts out I need another quarter. So this speaks to the popularity of arcades as Greydon told us in his interview. That was the place to be when you were a teenager in the early 80s, was the arcade. Place to be seen.
Oh, yeah.
Jeff, did you ever spend any time in an arcade as a kid?
The first video game arcade was more like the bowling alley in Elkhorn. They basically had 2 or 3 video games. So I definitely played there. Legit arcades were more up around Milwaukee. There might have been one in Lake Geneva. But it wasn't until junior high and high school that video games were super hot, like Street Fighter and the Mortal Kombat games were out. But I always liked video arcades. Whenever I went to Vegas, I went to Circus and the gigantic video arcade that was there.
For us, dames, and maybe you can speak to this, it never seemed like when we were younger kids, when these were at their peak, that there was an arcade around for us to really go to. But like by the time I was like later in grade school, like the nickel arcades became popular, and we had one in a suburb of Portland, Oregon that we went to for like special occasions. And that's when you could actually like beat the game and afford it, you know.
It was fun, man. $20, you'd be there all day long.
Yeah.
Nice.
So what video games did you guys notice in here in this movie at all?
I noticed quite a few, but only a few that I actually wrote down, like Defender, Miss Pac-Man, obviously.
Defender.
That one was the one that they kept showing, but like Pac-Man was like all over the place for what
Did
I
I
could tell.
catch an Space Invaders shot? Did they show that at all?
You might have. The other one I kind of thought I saw a few times was Centipede.
And then they obviously featured Satan's Hollow, as we learned
Oh, yeah,
with
Satan's
Walter
Hollow.
Day in the prior segment, and obviously Pac-Man with those wipes that Greydon so wonderfully gave us some information about.
Waka 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 waka.
Jeff, you're our car guy. Why don't
Yep.
you walk us into this next segment, or give us a ride into this?
Or did you want to fall into the jacuzzi of the 1980 Chevrolet camper?
That was a Chevy camper? That they
I'm
were
pretty sure that was the Chevy camper. You didn't get a good view at like the brand on that, but the way the doors were on the right-hand side, that looked more like a Chevy camper. I actually did a little bit of research for this podcast for once, and it wasn't a Ford because the doors were a lot narrower. The actual pull-out door, like I saw, was for more of the Chevy camper.
It's like, I'd recognize that hot tub anywhere.
Yeah,
Now,
with the hot wife.
Now, would that be spacious enough? Since we didn't get a chance to ask him if he really rigged up the hot tub inside there, or if they used trickery, would that be spacious enough to actually fit that, do you think?
Yes, barely.
Okay.
Some people did do that with those kind of vehicles back then, or have like full queen-size beds. I think you could fit in there.
Yeah,
So people
if you're
did
gonna
actually
do that-
like use that.
If you're going to do that, do it right, like they did in the movie. Like, you got to have the ladies to go with it, or it's pointless.
Well, if that band's a rockin', don't come a knockin'. Just come flying in through the moonroof.
Well, thanks for revving it up, Jeff.
Hey, you are
That
welcome.
brings us to our next segment. James Marvs, Playboy Watch.
Kim Malin?
Malin. Let's go with Malin.
Malin. Let's go with Malin. Adorable, by the way. She is in an issue of Playboy. I believe it is May of 1982. I ordered it online, but it has not arrived yet.
Oh.
Too bad. Too bad we wouldn't be able to show you it anyway. I mean, we could show you the front of it, barely.
Couple of ads.
Couple
yeah.
ads.
Becky LeBeau, who's been involved actually in producing Playboy TV since then, and still is involved in producing many segments of that. She was in a European issue from February of 85, and also was able to find her in July of 1982. So both the centerfolds for the American versions were in 82. Both were ordered. Both have not arrived yet. I'm guessing it's because Christmas is right around the corner and the mail's just backed up. Greydon Clark, not in Playboy. However, I did find this amazing picture for you from 1974.
Oh my goodness, it's
Oh, no.
Joe Don Baker, isn't it? So Greydon got a couple of models a year after they were in there. Actually, they probably filmed this in like 82, so he was like, let's pick through the Playboy models that we have available this year, find the best ones for Joysticks. Well, good call. And that brings us to the segment Mad About the Movies,
Mad about the movies?
in which my friend Alfred E. Newman, the Mad Magazine mascot, and I try to tell you how this film, our Cult Film of the Week, factored into the pages of Mad Magazine. And
Can't wait for this.
interestingly enough, Joysticks was nowhere near big enough to make Mad Magazine's radar. But you know what? The video game craze was not lost on Mad, and they were definitely in on it with, in terms of the popularity of arcades and the fact that teens loved arcades and teens loved Mad Magazine. So basically, September 1982, issue number 233, they actually saw fit to name a fictional video game star of the year, and they named Pac-Man Irving Pack, by the way, Man of the Year.
Awesome.
In this Time magazine.
I was going to say, I love the look of that with the Time.
And by the way, it's very rare to have a cover of Mad where Alfred E. Newman actually isn't anywhere on the cover, but this is one of them. And this is a fantastic issue and acknowledgement of the popularity of Pac-Man. He was
I love the angry eye he's got rocking right there.
Yeah, oh yeah, he was mad. So Irving Pack, if anybody ever asks you what Pac-Man's actual given name is.
I wish I had my Pac-Man book down here.
Tim Balderramos, who he wrote a book about how to get the perfect score on Pac-Man. Something else that Billy Mitchell has done as well. Okay. What were some of your guys' favorite lines in Joysticks?
This is actually more quotable than the last movie we did.
It is. I found some.
Well, if his pants are here, he can't be far behind him.
I've got one, Eugene. I'd like you to meet Simba.
Ladies, prepare yourselves. What the hell?
He named himself.
Terrible.
He named his junk Simba. Well before The Lion King. Is that where they got the character name from?
I don't know, but if they would have held it up and went,
yeah.
He holds up a joystick instead of a baby lion.
Jerk it to the right. Totally awesome, Simba.
Baby, okay. Jeff, did you write anything down?
I did. I have a couple. One is, you know the rules, Candy. I do the touching.
That's a good one.
And then the other one I kind of got a kick out of was, why can't my daddy be like everyone else and stay home and barbecue?
I wrote that one down too. That's by Patsy Rutter, is Joe Don Baker's daughter. Total Valley Girl ripoff accent.
Yep. Horrible Valley accent, but
it was not good. It wasn't.
No.
I had a hard time. I had to have the subtitles on.
She's so cute, but I'm like, what language are you speaking? My God. And then I love how she jumps in the pool.
Refresh my memory.
She kind of hops and puts
I'll go to the fucking. She's like, I'll go to the fucking arcade anytime I want, bitch. She's just like, boop.
After she takes her dad's money and then jumps into the pool. Yeah.
I wrote down one that made me uncomfortable, and I'm not sure that you could get away with it today. When Eugene finally puts his pants on and gets his dick rubbed by those girls, he goes to get behind the counter. There's a black kid standing there, and he goes, "Excuse me, brother." And I just thought that might have been something you could get away with at that time, but now he might get floored for saying something like that.
Gee, I thought you were going to go with, I'm sorry, it looks like I got my dog in your thingy.
Oh, is that when the hot dog shoots in between? Yeah.
No, that made me quite comfortable, Jeff.
Gotcha.
He's like, I know that situation. One that was quotable, according to subtitles, is when they say Dorfus maneuver, and then he farts. I was rewatching this on my computer today on Tubi, and I had the subtitles on, and it says thunderous wet farting.
Yep.
Dorfus starts ripping one, and then later in the movie when he farts again, because that was something that they went back to the well on because it was that good. Later it goes, Dorfus farts wetly. So
God damn, that's disgusting.
my applause go to the person who typed up the subtitles for this.
Bravo!
Thunderous wet fart. Dane, before we change segments, I want to point out that this photo is two of the main girls here. One of them looks a lot like CF3 friend Rebecca Marcus.
Oh, you're right.
Look at this. Am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong.
It's uncanny. It's
Yeah.
uncanny. Might have
Somebody
to
Jeff's
check
like,
the
it's
website.
canny. Jeff's like, it's canny, but I don't really know her that well.
Another line is when Jefferson, for some reason, wants to see a Polaroid of Eugene with his pants down. Like, I don't know why. What's
his obsession with that?
I don't know why that's how he gets his kicks.
No, I'm not going to get naked with you girls unless I see a picture of my bartender with his wiener out.
He's a nerd.
Got to see
He's
it.
a total nerd. And then he goes, "Great legs, Eugene." That's the line.
And his legs aren't even in the
Can't
picture.
see his legs.
Mhm.
You can't even see his legs.
Oh my god, boy.
And then he later, then he goes on to lure the women into showing the picture by promising them to play strip video with them. This is pure male fantasy, dude.
Strip video game where he doesn't even play. The clothes just keep coming off when they lose.
This pure male fantasy, Greydon. I'm looking at you, sir.
Giggling around while they're all naked on him.
Okay, that was favorite lines. Let's do Total Recast.
For the memory of a lifetime, recast, recast, recast.
Okay, I've got 3 different ones, so in case I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, so I can let one of you go first.
No, you go.
Okay.
Good. I want to hear yours.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna just do all 3 here then.
Do it.
The first one would be recasting Dorfus with John Belushi, which,
Ooh.
by the way, would cost you a pretty penny at the time. But that's
Yeah.
clearly what they wanted him to be like, and you would have made probably $30 million at the box office, just by having John Belushi in your movie in 1982 or 3 or whatever. Second one, anytime I see a nerd in the 80s, I want that nerd to be Eddie Deason. And,
There you go.
And so
He's
casting
a great
Eugene
guy.
as Eddie just makes sense to me. And then third, I would recast Jefferson, the arcade manager kid, preppy, with Ted McGinley. First of all, he's familiar with playing characters named Jefferson.
Mr. Darcy.
There you go, Married with Children. And he's just much more suave and believable as a total dill hole.
Older, though.
Well, he did Revenge of the Nerds like a year later
Yep.
in '84, so you can't say
All
he
right,
couldn't have
all right,
fit because it was
Hey.
right around that age group of just being out of high school. Or
You know what? I backed mine off. I was going to say John Ritter because he was just
Oh.
into his 30s. But
Yeah.
John Ritter would have been awesome. Like Three's Company Jack or John Ritter would have been perfect for that part too. And he would have added
Mhm.
like a charismatic, I don't know. There's just something about John Ritter and everything that he's in.
Physical
that was
comedy.
amazing.
He had
Yes.
the physical comedy. He could
Yes,
have,
yes.
He could have ad-libbed so much of that because he was
Um,
extremely talented.
Again, though, at that time would have cost you more than the movie made. Since I said that, I'll go ahead and give you my others. Eugene, if you were recasting it today, I know he's a little bit older, but Christopher Mintz-Plasse would be awesome
Ah, there you go.
as Eugene. And this is just, I threw this out of right field. The Joysticks punks, recast them with Return of the Living Dead punks. So you'd have Linnea Quigley and all the gang in there instead of those guys.
That's
Much better film we'd get. Much better film. And we know
just
that
wanted-
she'd show her tits.
Yeah, you just wanted to see one of them nude the entire movie.
Well, they kind of, I mean, the way they walked around reminded me of that, so I was like, well, why not? That'd be perfect.
Yeah.
Jeff, what you got?
Well, I don't really have a recast for back in those days. Those are some great choices with Ted McGinley. I really like that one. I didn't even think of that. But since you reminded me so much of it, if they were going to do like in the appropriate age range, Eugene should be played by Sean Astin, because he just reminded me of a very geeky version of him, just straight up. I think that would have been great.
You guys, it's so crazy how on point we are together, because I thought Sean Astin too.
I know. When
I was like,
watching
man,
him,
he was just a little bit too young. I was like,
Yeah.
he's just a little bit too young, but that's him, dude. That is him. You're right. I saw it. Good call.
And
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
oh no, that's okay. And for Dorfus, not likely to happen because he has passed away. But Chris Farley as Dorfus in an appropriate time frame would have absolutely killed it. And if you're going to do one today, I'd actually make John Grease the dad, Mr. Ritter,
Nice.
just as a comeback, because I think he would do a pretty good job.
And I think it's hard to recast John Grease, and I'm glad that we finally get to talk about him on this
Uncle
podcast.
Rico.
Because he is Uncle Rico in Napoleon Dynamite.
amazing.
I think he's really good in this. And by the way, he's also in the Monster Squad in a bit part of it, like blink if you miss him. But I think he does a serviceable job as Vidiot in this. And what a discovery! I don't know if Greydon was the one who actually discovered him, but like it's probably one of his earliest substantial roles, if not. So, thank you, John Grease, for putting in a wonderful performance in this film.
Hey, I stayed away from it. I just want to throw mine in there. I stayed away from recasting that character because when I saw it, I see Flea, but age appropriate never works for that. But I mean, that would have been a good cast. You know the time frame I'm thinking. Yeah. So anyway, you guys. That was great. That was a great.
Yeah, we all
recast.
did pretty good.
Let's pat ourselves on the back for that total recast. And with that, dames, the box office report, please.
Ooh,
Sure.
the other back end of this podcast or video cast.
The commentary track states by Greydon himself that he had a relatively low budget. He says about $250,000. So other sources go all the way up to $310,000 for this film. When it was released in the spring of '83, it was actually the #1 movie the weekend it opened. #1 movie, not just comedy. It was the #1 movie that weekend, and then it died. But worldwide numbers, almost $4 million, you guys. So that's more. I mean, that's a huge return on a tiny investment, and would definitely be considered a great success.
In a typical Greydon Clark fashion, he didn't get all the money that he was owed and stuff, but it was enough of a success that he got to keep like mortgaging his house to make future movies. His career just didn't end, because of Joysticks. It was a success, and that's great.
And let's show Jeff. You have the best version of this. We both have the homemade version that Greydon gave us. Dane, you got yours handy.
Jeff has a Blu-ray, which is out of print, unfortunately.
Yep, from Scorpion Releasing.
And ours are signed DVDs. Let us move on with our final thoughts. And right here is actually a good spot for director Greydon Clark to give us his thoughts and his Cult Filmometer score. Take it away, Greydon. But we would like you to contribute a score to what we call the Cult Filmometer, which we use to measure cult film status. And so we ask our guests to always rate the film of the week, so Joysticks on a scale of 0 to 100. If this was your biggest moneymaker, you might give it a very high score because of that. You can rate it because it's one of your most memorable films. However you want to go about it, 0 to 100, and we will put it in with our scores at the end of the show.
Well, I hate to tell you, but all of my films are 100.
Hey,
No, I love it.
I love it.
I love it too. They're your babies.
I mean, I'm often asked what is my favorite film, And my answer is always the same. I have 2 sons. Now, if you ask me which of those is my favorite, I would say, well, it depends what day it is. What have they been doing?
Who wrecked the car last night?
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. So some of my films were more successful than others, certainly. Some received stronger critic response, stronger audience response, but all of them had, for me, fond memories. It's been an interesting life. So all of my films, although some I cringe at scenes, of course, and others I think, geez, if I just had one more hour, I could have filmed another angle, another take with an actor. Because when you make a movie in 3 weeks, and really that's more important than the budget, because time is money. And you have to, as a low-budget filmmaker, you have to schedule very carefully. Like you mentioned Jack Palance. Or Joe Don Baker or George Kennedy or Marty Landau. Most of those guys, in fact, all of them really, well, maybe with the exception of Joe Don, they were not really the stars of the movie. The stars of the movie were the young kids, were the kids that ran the video arcade. And then Joe Don playing the heavy, the parent who wanted to close it down, or Jack Palance playing a guy fighting the alien, or in the picture prior to that, a drug dealer. I usually had them for 1 week. And I had to film them in a way, I had to schedule it in a way to be able to do it in 1 week. And then I would take 2 weeks to film the body of the movie, the young kids.
Start with you, Dames.
All right. So, decent film. Starts out promising. I love there's tits all over the place. Unafraid, unabashed. The people to see this film loved it. They came up and showed up in droves on opening weekend, and then presumably went back to the arcades. The thing that falls short for me on this movie is it doesn't keep you going. Like, say, Revenge of the Nerds is this type of movie that keeps you going all the way through. Like, it starts out strong and it ends in the same fashion that it begins, and this movie does not. About halfway through, it's very loose at points. I mean, the comedy's there. It's funny. It's watchable. But it's not. The reason that Revenge of the Nerds is an absolute classic is because it holds up all the way through, and this one just falls off the face of the earth halfway through. I still liked it. I'm glad that we know Greydon and we got to talk to him about this film and others. But yeah, that's where I'm. I just think it's okay.
Okay. Fair. Jeff.
I pretty much agree with the dames over here, where the movie starts off fun and exciting, and then in the middle it just kind of tapers off. I kind of feel like when they started to introduce the Sandy arc and the reason why he doesn't play video games, I felt like they were reaching a little bit as to his explanation as to why he doesn't play video games. So there's a little bit of inconsistency there. It felt like it wanted to try and tell a completely different story, and then it merged with everything else, and it just didn't really work. I did like how it ended, though. It did come back at the end, so at least it stuck a little bit of a landing. Wasn't perfect. I got a kick out of all the details. The video games are great. The classic cars rolling around, like the Mustang as a flower mobile and the Plymouth Valiant that Eugene was driving at the beginning. Cars were good. Acting was fun. Joe Don always delivers whatever kind of role he needs to bring. So, say what you want. Some of the acting was over the top. Some of it wasn't. The only thing I really didn't dig was Eugene being overly nerdy. We didn't need to go like that far off the deep end, but so it was a point of comedy, slapstick in this. So I did enjoy it. I love John Grease. So this is a good, fun movie, and you can find this on like Tubi. You can rent it off Amazon Prime, or you can go to Greydon's website and pick up a copy there too.
Excellent. And thank you for bringing up that point about, I mean, it's just a rice paper thin plot point why he doesn't like the girl that left. And like, it's lazy writing is what it is. And that's too bad because I think with a clever script, this could have been a massive, massive hit. It delivered the video games, the women, and, you know, it had the will to be a successful video-themed sex comedy, you know, in the 80s. But there was just, like, something lacking in the script. Greydon mentioned that somebody had written a first draft for him and he didn't like it, so they just rewrote it with some other people. You know, I wonder what was in that other one. Would it have been better? I don't know, but this could have been a Porky's for the arcade set. It didn't even need to have an awesome plot. I think it's just that the lack of memorable hijinks and clever shticks. They went with really lazy gags. Meant that it never really like delivered on the promising premise that it had. But looking back, this is what we have when we think of arcade-themed teen comedies from the 80s. This and Pinball Summer, made in Canada and starring friend of the show, Helene Beauty. So I can't fault it too much for being one of the only movies that tried this. And it's very easy to watch, even if you're not paying attention to it. You're not going to miss anything. Great to have in the background. And gosh darn it, Greydon is a darn fine human being. So with that, guys, let's flash our scores for the Cult Filmometer.
3,
2, 1. Whoa, we're all over the map here. So I've got a 73. Jeff's got an 83. Dame's went with 60.
69!
Gee, I wonder why.
You see, your stupid minds, stupid.
So factoring in the perfect 100 that Greydon gives not just this film, but all of his films, Joysticks is going to wind up with an 81.25 on the Cult Filmometer. That is sparkling.
Is a new high for season 3. The previous high for season 3 was 74.79 with the other film that we did. And this one, 81.25. New high for season 3.
Woohoo.
Joysticks.
So congratulations, Joysticks. You beat out Howard the Duck.
I
With
don't
a
know
little
how.
jerk to the right. Totally awesome video game.
Dames doesn't know about that, but I'm very comfortable with it because as far as like when you compare the resources that each movie had, there's one of them that I'd way rather watch and is way easier for me to watch over and over and over. And that one scored in the 80s.
You're full of shit. You're full of shit, Dane.
This has been CF3. Any parting words, you guys? We can't miss on saying this. The person who plays Rudder's wife in the movie was the voice of the Baroness in G.I. Joe, the movie.
Whoa.
Oh, Morgan Lofton?
Come on, you guys. That's incredible.
Oh, that's also kind of an interesting point, too, is that she was probably one of the first MILFs on movie screen for comedies, for raunchy comedies in the 80s.
Yeah, that's an 80s MILF right there. The original MILF, of course, being Mrs. Robinson from The Graduate.
Right. I wasn't going to say she was the first, but she was like... That was totally funny, the whole makeout session. That just dragged out like way too long. Oh my god.
And like him farting out the window, like, or during that, like
the door.
The doorway.
Jeez, Billion, I told you to go to the doctor for that.
I love that was their whole plot, was to seduce the wife and siphon the gas out of it. That's what I'm talking about. Lazy. It was like lazy.
I know.
Whereas Revenge of the Nerds had this elaborate panty raid to bring back to a movie Dames compared this to, and rightfully so. But
well, and it kept that plot just moving along. It kept going from one thing to the next, not lingering on one thing or another.
Yeah. But that's Joysticks, and we'll see you next time.